So in just a few minutes, like I said in the beginning of our newscast, that President Moon Jae-in will be giving a lecture titled Republic of Korea and ASEAN, Partners for Achieving Peace and Co-Prosperity in East Asia, as part of a series of Singapore lectures delivered by world leaders on current affairs. Now, the special lecture for Singapore's top opinion leaders will help to provide an insight on how South Korea tries to provide and denuclearize North Korea and establish lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula amid recent developments that we've been seeing surrounding North Korea. And the Singapore lecture is one of the intellectual highlights of Singapore, which gives an opportunity for distinguished statesmen and leaders like President Moon Jae-in to reach a wider audience in the country and for the audience to hear from leading world figures speak on topics of global and regional interest. And Mr. Moon's trip to Singapore follows his two historic summits with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, which were held on April 27th and also on May 26th, as well as the historic summit between Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore on June 12th. Now, according to the Blue House, during the lecture, President Moon will be explaining Seoul's vision and policy for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, as well as ways to bring lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula, and also his new southern policy that aims to upgrade South Korea's cooperation with ASEAN member nations. And with that, let's take a look at the video.
As a lawyer,
there's President Moon sitting next to him, about to start the lecture.
He was heavily involved in the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit between President Oh and former DPRK leader Kim Jong-il, which led to the Declaration for Advancing Inter-Korean Relations and Peace and Prosperity. President Moon's dedication and pursuit of peace has been well received by the Korean people. President Moon's speech today is very timely. The situation on the Korean Peninsula is of global concern and, of course, concern to all of us here in the region. There have been significant developments since the beginning of this year, and President Moon in particular has played a key role to create the conditions for a return to dialogue, beginning with the hosting of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics and the two inter-Korean summits. Complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula will take time, and it is therefore important for all stakeholders to continue to work together and support ongoing efforts to achieve lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. President Moon is eminently qualified, and we are distinctly privileged to have him address us this morning. And it is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency President Moon Jae-in to deliver the 42nd Singapore Lecture on ROK and ASEAN, Partners for Achieving Peace and Co-Prosperity in East Asia. I give you President Moon.
Thank you for the introduction. Honorable citizens of Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, the North Korea-US Summit has now lit up the road to peace. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation to the people and government of Singapore for providing support to make the summit of the century a big success. Singapore is the world's leader when it comes to Asian studies and is leading the Asian value. I feel a sense of friendship towards the Institute of Southeast Asia Studies that has invited me for the Singapore lecture today. Last year in Manila, the Philippines, I met with Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong. We promised to visit each other as early as possible, and I'm very delighted that we've finally met. Honorable people of Singapore, Singapore is peace itself. We cannot talk about peace without mentioning Singapore. Singapore, which started off as a small fishing village, has now established peace and prosperity. When hostility prevailed during the times of Cold War and confrontation, Singapore led the initiative of establishing the ASEAN and dialogue. It also established the value of ASEAN-centered, and it has contributed greatly to the expansion of ASEAN through ASEAN Plus 3, as well as the East Asia Summit. Southeast Asia is now able to sustain peace thanks to the ASEAN. Sustainable regional stability was possible due to the third road of regional cooperation, and Singapore stood at the forefront of establishing peace. Southeast Asia is the world's most diverse region. It's where Muslim, Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, and socialism coexist. ASEAN has become a model that showcases the diverse civilizations can coexist in a peaceful manner. Now, the peace established together by Singapore and the ASEAN has garnered international attention. If we can call the 21st century an era of peace and coexistence, the 21st century can also be called the century for ASEAN. And I believe that at its center lies Singapore. South Korea yearns for peace. There is no other nation that is more desperate to establish peace than South Korea. We have lost everything through war and have endured enormous pains under the threat of war. I myself am a son of a refugee who went aboard a vessel for refugees with nothing in their hands and leaving behind their homes, and thus I know how crucial and important peace is. The consistent effort exerted by Singapore to establish peace has made it to the venue for the North Korea-US summit. I believe that the support of Singapore's people who have established peace made the North Korea-US summit a big success. I highly respect the efforts exerted by the ASEAN and Singapore to establish peace, and I would like to ask you to walk together with us towards a greater prosperity through peace. Honorable citizens of Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN is South Korea's partner that will make a peaceful community together. It is also a trade partner as well as an investment destination that will achieve economic development together. Now our relationship is moving beyond one of a neighbors and developing into that of a family. I have acknowledged the importance of ASEAN and have exerted my efforts to usher in a new future together with ASEAN. After taking office in May last year, I was the first to send a special envoy to the region, aiming to make closer ties with ASEAN. In September, the ASEAN Culture House was established in my hometown of Busan, being the first ASEAN partner to do so. In November, I declared the new Southern policy after visiting Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. In March this year, I revisited Vietnam and agreed with President Trần Đại Quang to strengthen practical cooperation for regional peace and co-prosperity. And before coming here, I also met with Indian Prime Minister Modi to carry out deeper coordination and future-oriented cooperation within the framework of regional multilateral consultative body. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1975, Singapore and South Korea have been pursuing common goals of free and open economy as well as establishing regional peace and stability. The two nations have overcome numerous challenges after being independent from colonization. Although both nations did not have natural resources, we considered our people as our hope and nurtured our talents. Thanks to the energy of our people, we have made possible remarkable economic growth, which is often dubbed the miracle of the equator and the miracle on the Han River. Yesterday, Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong and I have agreed on detailed measures to develop the Singapore-ROK ties a step further. We will expand exchanges in order to nurture our talents. We will carry out economic cooperation, which our people will be able to benefit from. South Korea's companies have already proactively participated in establishing and building Singapore's major landmark buildings. Going forward, we will prepare the era of the fourth industrial revolution together and witness closer cooperation for regional peace and prosperity. ASEAN and South Korea mutually benefit each other by complementing what each other lacks. We are indeed the optimal companions to usher in a future of peace and co-prosperity. I aim to upgrade and develop our relationship with ASEAN to the level of our relationship with major countries surrounding the Korean Peninsula, including the US, China, Japan, and Russia. This is my strategic vision, and I'm emphasizing the new Southern policy. New Southern policy is about establishing a future-oriented partnership for people, co-prosperity, and peace with Southeast Asian countries, including Singapore. It's about meeting more often, expanding the opportunity for co-prosperity through practical cooperation, and contributing to world peace, moving beyond the Korean Peninsula and ASEAN. Singapore, as the chair of ASEAN this year, is leading the region's peace and prosperity. It's also a core partner for our new Southern policy. I hope to see ASEAN and South Korea develop bilateral ties with the proactive help by Singapore. Honorable people of Singapore, Singapore is a balance within Asia, and it's also a melting pot of Eastern and Western civilizations. It's a small nation, but has a large room for embracement. One can find a Buddhist temple, Hindu temple, Christian church, Islam mosque, Taoist temple in a single street, and people who work at 9,000 multinational corporations are walking down this avenue. It is also renowned globally for its harmony and concord among multi-races and multicultural. Above all, what I respect the most is the fact that it's creating ideologies without making ideological prejudice and being swayed by ideologies. It's also a society that prioritizes a practicality that is focused on talent and is a nation that boasts integrity. Also, it has the world's most fair judicial system. This is probably where Singapore's energy that has established harmony and concord originates. South Korea has been ailing long due to the long confrontation of ideologies. The divisions of the two Koreas have tolerated corruption, privilege, and injustice that have been described as ideologies, and thus we have wasted our energy. This is something to be ashamed of. Yet we are indeed making a fair and just society. And in this process, there are a lot to learn from Singapore. I believe that the power of Singapore to imagine and act boldly all comes from its talent, practicality, integrity, and fairness. And with such energy, Singapore has processed over 1/7 of the world's transshipment amount and has now become the world's second-largest container port. Singapore's next-generation national vision of Smart Nation project is a preemptive response for the fourth industrial revolution on a national basis. One of such innovative projects is self-driving taxis. The aim of Singapore to make the environment and quality of life better through better public transportation will transform the thoughts of the people who prefer to drive their own cars. With its innovative economic and social policies, Singapore is presenting a new road for the humanity. And looking at Singapore's spirit of challenge, I'm certain that we are ushering in an era for Asia. I also aim to make South Korea a nation that can have bold imaginations. Korea has one opportunity that Singapore or no other nation has. It is the Inter-Korean Economic Cooperation. The Inter-Korean Summit is just the beginning. Until last year, this was something that people only dreamed of. Based on complete denuclearization and peace on the Korean Peninsula, Korea will map out a new economic map. South and North Korea will go towards making an economic community. We will make our countries into a platform where anyone can exert their talents fairly. And we will make a Korean peninsula where prosperity blossoms based on peace. Once peace is established on the Korean Peninsula, together with Singapore and ASEAN, Asia will be the most prosperous region in the world. And it will be the beacon of hope that shines on the future of the humanity. Honorable people of Singapore, the leaders of South and North Korea and the United States have shifted the direction of history with the Panmunjom Declaration between the two Koreas and the joint statement issued after the North Korea-US summit. We have taken a step forward with confidence to establish a complete denuclearization and everlasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. I and President Trump share the same view that we will resolve the North Korean nuclear issue based on robust ROK-US alliance. Based on such shared view, South Korea and the U.S. have shared the process of historic transformation from North Korea's participation of the Pyeongchang Olympics, the mutual visits of their envoys, to the Inter-Korean Summit as well as the North U.S. Summit. And we will continue to be together going forward. I have also established close cooperation and coordination as well as communication with Prime Minister Abe with the common goal of establishing complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. The normalization of relations between the two Koreas has led to normalization of relations between the North and the U.S., and it will further lead to the normalization of relations between the North and Japan. This will contribute to the peace and stability of the Korean Peninsula as well as Northeast Asia. To this end, we aim to cooperate with Japan in earnest. During the South Korea-China-Japan Trilateral Summit held in Japan in May, Japan and China congratulated the successful hosting of Inter-Korean Summit. And they have also made clear their proactive support for the faithful implementation of the Panmunjom Declaration. In December last month, I visited Beijing and met with President Xi Jinping. We talked in depth about issues on the Korean Peninsula, and we confirmed that we will cooperate closely to resolve the North's nuclear issue in a peaceful manner. Last month, I met with President Putin in Russia, and we agreed to prepare for a trilateral cooperation among the two Koreas and Russia. We also agreed to intensify our cooperation so that peace and prosperity can be enjoyed on the Korean Peninsula as well as Eurasia. And I met twice with Chairman Kim Jong-un of the DPRK. Chairman Kim was strongly willing to develop North Korea into a normal state, moving away from ideological confrontations. If Chairman Kim follows through on his promise for denuclearization, he can indeed make his country move towards prosperity. It may not be an easy road ahead, but an earnest implementation of the agreement reached between the two leaders can help us achieve our goal. We will be able to speed up the process if North Korea comes up with detailed plans for denuclearization and when South Korea and US lay out comprehensive measures that go parallel with such plans. My administration will exert its full efforts to begin economic cooperation by making a peace regime as soon as possible. We will continue to cooperate with the international community to make Panmunjom Declaration and Sentosa Agreement become agreements that end the last remains of the Cold War. Honorable citizens of Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, just as you have done so far, I look forward for a constructive role by Singapore and ASEAN. ASEAN and South Korea have shared the same goal that a peace regime should be established on the Korean Peninsula and that the North's nuclear issue must be resolved in a peaceful manner to enable regional peace and stability. Since year 2000 in particular, ASEAN has provided a communicative channel between North Korea and the rest of the international community through the ASEAN Regional Forum. The ARF is the only multinational conference that is participated by North Korea and has become a valuable communication channel between the North and the international community. In addition, ASEAN has consistently been vocal that North Korea abandons its nuclear weapons and missiles development and return to the road for peace and prosperity. The road for cooperation between Korea and ASEAN during our journey to establish peace on the Korean Peninsula is not far away. As the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic did in February, I sincerely hope that the Asian Games to be held in Indonesia next month will become a platform of harmony that contributes to peace on the Korean Peninsula. It's important to embrace North Korea into the numerous cooperation and exchange promotion frameworks that are already established between South Korea and ASEAN. Once North Korea implements the measures towards denuclearization in earnest, I hope that ASEAN can invite the North into its various consultative bodies, which will then intensify cooperation with North Korea. ASEAN has established mutual economic cooperation relations with North Korea even before the international society's sanctions against the North for its nuclear development. Moreover, with the ROK-ASEAN FTA, it has provided support for the inter-Korean economic cooperation by imposing the same tariff cuts on products manufactured at the Kaesong Industrial Complex as those produced in South Korea. The economic cooperation between North Korea and ASEAN that have once been very active will resume once international sanctions against the North are lifted following the North's complete denuclearization. And this is expected to contribute to the economic development of both the North and ASEAN. Peace on the Korean Peninsula will move forward, becoming a point of contact that connects the economies of ASEAN and Korea, as well as North Korea and Eurasia. And thus, it will create new economic growth engines for nations within the region, including the member states of ASEAN. Honorable citizens of Singapore, ladies and gentlemen, what Singapore has achieved through its harmony is the ideology of the humanity in the 21st century. At a time when the East meets West and the Southern Hemisphere meets with the Northern Hemisphere, Singapore stands at the juncture as a melting pot. It's also lighting up the light of Asia. I'm certain that Singapore will make another miracle moving beyond the achievements made during the past 5 decades. Like it did so far, Singapore will stand at the forefront of establishing ASEAN's peace and prosperity, and I confirm and firmly believe that it will be with us in achieving the Korean Peninsula's goal of complete denuclearization and peace. Let us usher in an era of peace based on peace in Asia, and let us make the hope of humanity based on the prosperity of Asia.